Everybody, Rosematter here. Welcome to episode 28 of my Chaos Head Nova Let's Play. We are almost done with the game. We only have a few more endings to get, and today going to be doing Senna's ending, Deus Ex Machina, and should be interesting. I really liked the last one we did, the Koze one. Kozu. Sorry, still can't pronounce her name, I apologize. A little bit of a slow start, but man, that ending, the last bit was like so intense, so good. I feel like Senna's is not going to be quite, I feel like it's going to get more into, because her father worked for Nozomi. I feel like we might get some more backstory into Nozomi, maybe some more backstory about like her family life. I don't know. So we'll see. I don't know. I feel like this one might be a little bit of a drier ending, but maybe we'll glean some interesting information out of it. So anyway, let's go ahead and start the Senna ending. Girl B looked down at me coldly. This chick wasn't normal, waving a sword around in the middle of a crowd. Wait, was she in the midst of a hit and run? Was she a spree killer? Or could she be the NewGen culprit, or the demon girl's accomplice? Please let me ogle you more. If it's with this girl, I'm willing to get down on my hands and knees and beg with all my heart and soul. If given the choice, I preferred being stepped on. Alright. I've got nothing against a little swordplay, if you know what I mean. She's gonna kill me with that sword either way. That's our one no. Alright, soda-flavored Goguri-kun. Discovered Senna's story. The next thing I knew, I was trembling. It felt like I was this close to pissing myself out of sheer terror. What the hell was she talking about? If I said I couldn't see it, would she kill me? How was I supposed to answer if I didn't even know what I was supposed to be seeing? D-sword. It was the first time I'd ever heard that word. It had to be referring to the sword she was holding, but I decided to just nod. I mean, I obviously could see it. There'd be something wrong with me if I couldn't. Lugging around a sword that large and conspicuous, and in center guy, no less. I'd be willing to accept it if this was Akiba, but in Shibuya of all places? Gathered? Who? By who? At the very least, I was definitely here voluntarily. In Japanese, please. Was what I wanted to say, but unsurprisingly, I wasn't brave enough. Then again, if I said the wrong thing, she'd probably stab me, so... Regardless, this chick had been spouting nothing but nonsense ever since she'd first opened her mouth. After she said that, Girl B turned around. Her skirt fluttered in the breeze, and I could almost see her panties. I hurriedly shut my eyes. I opened my eyes. The girl calling herself Senna had vanished. I was completely stunned, and it wasn't until I arrived back at my base that I realized I hadn't understood a single goddamn word she'd said. A solitary train car stood stock still near Shibuya Station. It was a car that was open to the public, with many referring to it as the Green Frog. Aoi Senna sat inside of it. Biting her thumbnail, she looked out the window and watched the passers-by with disinterest. She and Nishijo Takumi had spoken at length yesterday on this very train. Today she'd come here once again. She hadn't gone to school. Attendance was the least of her worries. She was constantly driven by feelings of impatience. As a result, she would often get very irritated with others. leading her fairly leading to her fairly harsh behavior toward them.
どこにいる頭
Her voice swelled with hatred, all of it directed toward a single individual. She dug a hand into her uniform pocket and took out a piece of paper. It was a small, crumpled scrap of paper torn from a memo pad. Okay, we're gonna get into this. Like, this was briefly touched on about the thing that Nishijo or Takumi randomly wrote on the back of a piece of paper. This, like, mathematical equation that apparently unlocked this whole ability to do everything. Written on it was something resembling an algebraic formula. The letters were faded and dull, perhaps due to aging, or perhaps because it had been written in pencil. Only one part remained barely legible, and that was IR2. It was the scribblings of Senna's father from long ago. Okay. So he was the one who had it initially, and then I guess they were able to implant that into Takumi's brain, that he was able to, like, pull that formula and then just write it down. Needless to say, she did not exactly treat it like a holy artifact. Instead, she simply kept it close so she could always remember the hatred she held for her father. Senna's family was once a happy one. However, the moment her father had scrawled a certain formula onto this piece of paper, slowly, silently, yet certainly, madness began to envelop everything. Don't know why I had trouble with that word so much. And that's why when she saw that formula that Takumi had written, he'd be like, that's why she just had that reaction. Senna's father had once been a corporate scientist. Senna had been just an elementary school student at the time. And while she did not understand the type of work her father did, she knew he was always busy. He was rarely home. Occasionally he would come home. He'd show his affectionate side, but that almost never lasted even a day. He would be back to work before anyone knew it. It was not that she disliked her father, but she was a little disappointed to find she could not think of a single time her father had ever sat down for a meal together. Then came a day about 6.5 years ago, where her father had returned home from work. Unlike his usual calm and collected self, he had been brimming with excitement.
Senna, 父さんはすごい発見をしたぞ。これはノーベル賞どころの騒ぎじゃない。
何がそんなにすごいの？
この公式はこれまでの世界の仕組みをも変えるだろう。それほどの大発見なんだ。
As he spoke, he held a memo pad before Senna's eyes. Written on it was the IR2 equation.
ずっと探していたんだよ。父さんではどうしても思いつけなかった。プロジェクトノアは停滞していた。手詰まりだった。だが、この公式があれば、計画は次の段階に進めるんだ。まさかあんなところで見つけるなんて思いもしなかったよ。これはまさに信仰の救いだね。
Wait. So hold on. Yeah, he said 6.5 years ago, and Takumi wrote that back when he was a kid. So he got it from Takumi, not the other way around, I guess. Wait, okay.
東京駅だ。たまたま通りかかったんだ。本当に偶然だった。セナは東京駅に行ったことはあったかな。やたら広いだろ、あの駅の構内は。その構内の一角に、
Oh shit, yeah, it is. Okay, so it did come from Takumi.
全国なんとか作文コンクールとか、そんな名前の展覧会だったよ。優秀な子供たちの作文が飾ってあってね。セナ知ってるかい？もしかして応募したりしたかい？
わかんない。多分知らない。
セナが出れば、きっとセナも優秀作品に選ばれていたんじゃないかな。
そんなことないよ。私、作文は苦手。
そうか？もっと自信を持つべきだと思うがな。
ねえ、作文がすごい大発見だったんだ。
いやー、違う。そうじゃないんだ。作文なんてどうでもいいんだよ。重要だったのは、その裏に書かれていた落書きなんだ。そこに飾られていた作文は、透明のプラスチックの額に収められていてね、裏側も見ることができた。それは多分、演出とかそういうものじゃない。たまたま透明なだけだったんだろうね。きっと主催者には、 作文の裏の落書きを見せようなんて気はなかったはずなんだ。だからこの公式を父さんが見る確率はそれこそ天文学的数字だったわけさ。これが奇跡というやつなのかな。
公式っていうことは算数なんだね。
ああ、そうだよ。すごく難しい算数だ。
算数で世界を変えられちゃったりするのかな。
ああ、変えられるよ。父さんの研究はね、世界を変えることなんだ。
ほんと？信じられないな。
いつか証明してあげるよ。見ていてくれ、セナ。
It had been over 6.5 years since that day. Gritting her teeth together, Shenna shoved the paper back in her pocket. She gazed through the window, her eyes focused on the dull sky above. Undoubtedly, the world would change soon, just as her father had said. Senna's own world had already undergone many drastic changes. Vileness, havoc, everywhere you looked you'd find more. It had become an unfathomably hideous place.
そんな世界は作らせない。奴を殺して私が止めてやる。
Alright, here we go. Chapter 8, Deus Ex Machina. Yo, Neinhard-kun, I've been waiting for you because there's another NewGen. What are you even on about? Okay, we've had this conversation before. How long was this damn thing gonna go on for? Was I next? Would I be the victim of the 8th case? The 9th? Anxiety aside, Grim was pretty much the NewGen news guy at this point. He'd been keeping me in the loop about basically everything. Even now, he was going out of his way to link a bunch of blog posts and news articles about it. It seemed like he really wanted me to take a look. Biting my lip, I reluctantly clicked the first link. Alright, so we've got the DQN puzzle is pretty much the same.
お前が望むと望まないとにかかわらず、もしこれ以上踏み込んでくるようなら、負を正にするぐらいの強い意識を持つんだな。中途半端な気持ちじゃ妄想に食われるだけだぞ。
Aoi Senna. Yesterday, when the two of us had gone our separate ways, she'd given me that piece of advice. She definitely knew something. She also had a D-sword. She seemed strong, too. Would she be my savior? If not, I was doomed. The following day, I made my way to the front of the station. In all honesty, I really didn't want to go back there. After all the traumatic Esper BS, the front of Shibuya Station brought back nothing but bad memories. Adding to my stress, just like usual, there were way too many people. The area around Hachiko was absolutely infested with normies loitering about. Everyone kept glancing at me and sneering as they pointed their phones at me. But when I turned around to look away, my eyes wandered up toward the towering O-front, the very building where I had committed social suicide only a few days ago. Videos covering every angle of that night continued to make the rounds on the internet, and they would likely continue to spread across the world for all eternity. Erasing them was pretty much impossible at this point. I was going to spend the rest of my life as the internet's favorite punchline. I was so frustrated, angry, and sad. It made me want to get as far away from it as I possibly could. But knowing Shogun would kill me the second I tried to escape, I was forced to painstakingly stand my ground. I cautiously stepped foot into the train carriage known as the Green Frog, trying my hardest to avoid looking at my surroundings. Unsurprisingly, there she sat, Aoi Senna, the train's sole passenger. It took me a minute, but I realized the reason why no one else was in the car was likely due to Senna's own handiwork. She'd used her gigalomaniac powers, or whatever they were.
お前か。エラーを見つけたのか。
Shaking my head lightly, I handed her the crunchy kun I'd brought in advance from the local convenience store. It was my way of getting my foot in the door. Here, I know it's not much, but I hope you like it. Oh? No, please don't worry about it. Thank you very much. And that's how it would go, all according to the stupid-ass Japanese custom. But even though I knew I was an idiotic, not even I would stoop as low as to ask for protection without giving something in return. As payment for her services, I would give her 3 crunchy kuns a day. It was an offer even Senna couldn't refuse.
くれるのか。ありがとう。
She accepted it with surprisingly little resistance. Everything was going according to plan.
西条は何味が好きだ。私は断然ソーダ味だな。
Oh shit, did you get her the wrong one? Is this just going to be about her crunchy kun obsession? That's what this whole playthrough is about. That's what we're going to get to learn about her. Senna excitedly tore open the wrapping and took out the popsicle. It might have just been my imagination, but it almost looked like her mouth had curved into a slight smile. I bet maybe like the reason why she has such a attachment to them, I bet is like, she talked about how her father would rarely be home, but I bet it's like, but every time he would come home, he would bring me a crunchy kun. You know, he stopped on his way home at the convenience store and got me a crunchy kun every time. So like I have this positive attachment to it without even realizing it. Man, just how obsessed with these things are you? You're practically asking for a stomachache.
僕はコーラ味。
なんだと。コーラ味なんて邪道だ。ふざけるな。
She's like, I refuse to help you because you have terrible taste.
すいません。
I'd made her mad. I thought about telling her off for getting upset over something so trivial, but I figured I'd better keep my mouth shut.
それで。
Taking a bite out of her crunchy kun, Senna shifted her probing gaze to me.
私に何か用か。
Ugh, why did she have to be so intimidating? The look in her eyes could turn me to stone. All I wanted was to ask for help, but it felt like the sheer anxiety alone was going to kill me. I was already bad enough at talking to 3D girls as it is. I took a few deep breaths and just barely managed to calm myself down.
僕を助けてほしい。
どういう意味だ。
僕はニュージェネの真犯人に、狙われてる。この前話したでしょ。将軍っていうやつなんだ。僕はきっとそいつに思考盗撮されてる。
思考盗撮か。そいつ何者だ。
知るもんか。僕が聞きたいぐらいだ。
この渋谷で思考盗撮できる連中なんて限られてる。ギガロマニアックスか、あるいはのぞみの連中か。
のぞみ？
のぞみテクノロジー、プロジェクトノアによって世界を手に入れようとしてる。
What was she on about? It sounded like some kind of conspiracy theory, but could Shogun be a member of that organization?
僕を助けてよ。頼むよ。
I felt myself rapidly sinking further into despair. I wanted something, anything to cling on to, something that would save me. Senna took another bite of her crunchy kun, then furrowed her brow. She's like, I don't help cola crunchy kun eaters.
言ったはずだ。中途半端な気持ちで踏み込むなら妄想に食われると。お前には覚悟があるか。
You know, it's funny playing this, like having her say that after just playing the Kozapi one, where our delusions did exactly what she said. They did devour us, and we did fall into despair.
ないよ。あるわけないだろ。僕がただ助けてくれって言ってるんだ。こんなのもううんざりなんだ。なんで僕ばっかり。
Sapped of all my willpower, I fell to my knees. Don't do this to me. Just protect me. What do you want me to do? I don't want to do anything anymore.
覚悟はなしか。
I felt her cold glare pierce through me. I could clearly tell just how pathetic I was, so all I could do at that point was hang my head in shame.
だが、その将軍というやつは気になるな。もし望みの人間なら、ニュージェネ事件も連中が起こしてるということか。だとしたら、それを捨ておくわけには。
With a frown, Senna muttered that to herself as she looked out the window. She seemed to be deep in thoughts, but she kept chewing on her crunchy kun regardless. Not long after I said something, Senna suddenly got up from her seat. She was now standing in front of me.
私に守ってほしいのか?
Damn it, she was always looking down on me. Did this bitch have a dominatrix fetish or something? Well, I mean, it seems like he might have a dominatrix fetish. One of the choices towards the beginning was like, I want her to step on me. Despite insulting her inside my head, I gave her a meek nod.
それはつまり、私とお前はこれから行動を共にするという意味だ。それでもいいんだな。
As long as you protect me, anything's fine. Protecting myself from Shogun's attacks was my highest priority right now.
本当に守ってくれるなら文句は言わない。
決まりだ。
Senna extended her hand toward me. I stared blankly at those delicate fingers of hers, unsure of what they were trying to convey. Growing impatient, Senna grabbed my hand and pulled me up. Our eyes met, if only for an instant. Having our gazes intertwined at such a short distance made me frantically avert my eyes. She then let go of my hand.
じゃあ行くぞ。
And then, as if to spur me onward, turned her back to me.
行くってどこへ?
のぞみテクノロジーの本社だ。
Damn, she's just going right there, huh?
これから乗り込む。
Okay, I like this. We're all right. This is like an infiltration playthrough. Okay. Infiltrate, like, into the enemy base? No. What? What was the stupid bitch thinking? Did she have a death wish? Well, this was game over. God, I was such an idiot for thinking I could rely on her. Like hell I was going anywhere near there. I wanted nothing to do with this. I wasn't the kind of person to just waltz right on into my death. I was the type of person who tells someone, wow, that plan fucking sucks, and then ditch them. Ignoring my look of disbelief, Senna strolled briskly out the door. However, I, meanwhile, stayed right where I was, refusing to budge an inch. Suddenly, I realized I could no longer move my arms. I glanced down at my body. Oh shit, she's bringing him. She's just gonna take him in chains and bring him. Before I could even blink, a white chain had coiled around my body. And on top of that, it was wrapped around me very, very tight. Even when I tried to force it off, it refused to budge an inch. What the? How did this even happen?
ぐずぐずするな。
Senna poked her head out the window, then urged me to come quickly. I felt the chain wrapped around my body being tugged. I tried to resist, but I no longer had full control of my body. The chain led outside the train carriage and ended when it reached Senna's hand. She was holding it. She was the one pulling me. So this is what queen and slave exhibitionist humiliation roleplay is like. I see. Wait, no, it was nothing like that. What the fuck? Ugh, god damn it. I was such an idiot for thinking I could rely on Senna. I'd clearly picked the wrong person for this. Someone help me. I can't take this anymore. God, he's just such a little bitch. I love he's like, yeah, I'll work together with you. Wait, no, never mind. Nozomi's main branch was apparently within walking distance of Shibuya Station, but my mental strength had already been completely drained before we even reached it. After all, Senna had been parading me around right smack in the middle of Shibuya. It went without saying practically every cell phone in existence had been pointed at me, and with that, my dark past had grown even darker. There was definitely a thread about it on @channel by now. Esper Nishijo indulging in puppy play with black-haired Butte in Shibuya. Ugh, the DQNs were never going to let me hear the end of this. No matter how much I pleaded with Senna, she refused to remove the chains.
今のお前にとって必要なのは目立つことだ。今のところ。
Oh, does she like making him basically... She's having Nozomi basically like focus on him for some reason? But if they're doing infiltration, you want to be as like secretive as possible. She's got a plan. Well, she's smart. He was constantly spouting all sorts of nonsensical reasoning like that. Seriously, what kind of bullshit logic was that? Anzai-sensei, I want to be a man who stands out from the crowd. Had I asked her anything like that? No, I fucking hadn't. Okay, what is this? It's been a while since we've had a tip. Oh boy, actually, there's been quite a few I haven't, okay, I actually haven't checked these in a while. Whoops. Having lived more than twice as long as the 7 other gigalomaniacs, Neurose's D-Sword had evolved. Okay, Oh man, I didn't see any of these. So these are talking about the different everybody's different blades or their D swords. And the names of them, I guess. Yeah, this is going to be Neurose's Aconitum. That's Nanami's rose. Is Yua's or Mia's, characterized by the red petals that dance in the air. I was a little nervous when I saw Rose. I'm like, oh shit, is this some like fourth wall breaking? Like they hacked into my computer and they got my name? Dahlia is Isa's. Oh, this is cool. I can't believe I didn't see this before. So Isa's is after a mythical dragon, Dahlia. The dragon appears in the 7 verses of the Lone Black Knight. Mia's is based on the Japanese phrase falling as flowers do, used in reference to those who die young. Aconitum is Nanami's, influenced by her strong desire to not let anyone else have her sword. Even the hilt itself is made of blades, making it impossible for even other gigalomaniacs to hold or wield. Snowdrop is going to be Kozu's, whose name I've already forgotten how to say properly. The excessively violent design of Kozu's sword represents the very soul, who has no mercy for those who seek to harm her. Yeah, she materialized a gigantic weapon that is the exact opposite of her physique. This is why whenever Kozu wields the sword, it appears as if the sword is swinging her around. Okay. Okay, so back to what we were originally checking out, which is Anzai-sensei, the coach from a famous basketball manga. On the internet, users parody a certain quote from the manga in order to express a desperate desire. Anzai-sensei, I want to blank. Another oft-quoted line, this one spoken by Anzai-sensei, is, if you give up, it's game over. Strolling right into the enemy base. What the hell was she thinking? We could be killed at any moment. Completely ignoring my complaints, Senna casually entered the fancy building, dragging me right along with her. After all, the chain had given me no choice in the matter. So she wants to draw people's attention to us. It's not really, it's not the kind of infiltration I thought it was going to be, where we're going to be like, you know, it's Mission Impossible. It's more like we're just busting through the front doors. The grandeur of the expansive lobby standing before us took my breath away. The NOZOMI group, it apparently had become one of Japan's leading conglomerates. A place like this was so far removed from the life of a student like me, it felt like a completely different world. Now we're getting all the tips. Conglomerate, a large corporate entity formed by the repeated merging of companies from various industries that are not directly related. I'd never set foot in a building quite like it before. The size of the lobby, the practical enshrinement of the hot grills at the reception desk. I had to take a moment to breathe. Wait, we were in a company workplace. Shouldn't it have been off-limits to unauthorized personnel? Both Senna and I were wearing sume uniforms, so we were very obviously high school students. Not only that, but I was wrapped up in a chain, too. We were practically screaming that we were intruders. For Senna to disregard this and enter the building like she owned the place, I began to doubt her sanity. The moment we entered through the automatic doors, I made eye contact with one of the receptionists.
帰ろうよ。
I was hesitant to go any farther than we already had, but Senna didn't stop moving.
心配するな。
We moved past the reception desk and headed toward the elevator in the back, and nobody said a word to us. What the hell? She's probably using her delusions to, like, basically, like, it's like a Jedi mind trick, like, we don't exist. Disregard. You did not see anything. Senna didn't get on the elevator, though. Instead, she chose to go for the fire escape near the hall. Beyond the door was a dimly lit emergency staircase, and that was where she finally stopped.
周囲は私たちを望み
Oh,
の社員だと
okay,
思い
yeah,
込
so
ん
there
で
we go. So she's deluded people. Got it. Suddenly, before I could even blink, the pressure on my body disappeared. When I looked down, I saw that the chain around me had vanished without a trace. And the next thing I saw was the D-sword in Senna's hand. Was that chain just a delusion Senna had real-booted using her gigalomaniac powers? So Senna had sent anti-particles into my dead spots, this time making the real-booted chain instantly disappear.
のぞみの社員と思ってるって、
そう思い込ませた。肉眼で私たちを見た人間全員にな。
She'd made them. She could do that? Senna then looked up at the top of the staircase. Something resembling a surveillance camera was installed there. It had a red light affixed to it, and it let out an eerie sound as it surveyed the room.
監視カメラにも思い込ませることってできるの？
やろうと思えばできるかもな。試したことはない。それに、やる必要もない。
なんでバレちゃうじゃないか。ありえない。スニーキングミッションでは監視カメラを最初に壊すでしょ。
Right.
常識的に考えて。
This is what I'm thinking from like all the Hitman I've played. I'm like, I want to take out that, let's take out that camera. Get a silenced pistol. Let's see, stealth mission, a type of level often seen in various action games. The goal is to infiltrate enemy territory, achieve an objective, and then escape, all without being detected. This type of mission has become so prevalent in modern games it's considered its own genre, also known as sneaking missions in a certain tactical espionage action series. Well, everyone who'd played a video game before, at least.
言っただろ。お前が目立つことが必要なんだ。
And that is exactly what I don't get. Aren't you contradicting yourself? You made them assume we're Nozomi employees in order to camouflage us, but then you turn around and say you need to stand out? Which is it? What exactly are you trying to do? All everyone ever does is speak in riddles. Do you all think I'm an idiot or something? What, do you all think to yourselves, even if I try to explain it, he won't get it? You are, aren't you? Fuck you. Damn it, I'm smart. My IQ is absolutely higher than Senna's, no doubt about it. As I bit my lip in frustration, Senna took off on her own up the stairs, leaving me behind to continue seething. Did this girl have any actual interest in protecting me? No, she didn't. After all, she'd already put me in harm's way by dragging me into this building. But regardless of her intentions, I just wish she'd stop rushing ahead on her own. She could at least tell me where she was going and what she was trying to do. Just give me some sort of explanation, please. Why were we using the staircase instead of the elevator anyway? I sucked at exercising.
エレベーターに乗るのは自殺行為だ。
Senna's voice rang out from above me. Has she read my mind again? Geez, all the stuff he's thought about her. Oh, she's probably just choosing to ignore that. With a sigh, I started heading up the stairs toward her voice. Senna was waiting 2 stories above me. As soon as I caught up, she started climbing again.
敵の本拠地でエレベーターに乗ったら閉じ込められて身動きが取れなくなるのがオチだろ。
それはそうだけど。
それより西条、将軍について教えろ。そいつはいつからお前を攻撃するようになった？
1ヶ月ぐらい前から。
話したことがあるんだな。
When I nodded in response, Senna stopped dead in her tracks and looked down at me from a few stairs above. I can see your panties from this angle, Senna-san. I averted my eyes out of reflex.
どんなことを言っていた？
A lot of things. I took a moment to tell Senna about everything Shogun had said up till that point, as well as the fake kidnapping he'd staged to try and scare me.
畑野という名前に聞き覚えは？
ないけど。
将軍が言っていたかもしれないだろう。よく思い出せ。
Hatano. I'd never heard that name before.
誰？
プロジェクトノアに関わっていた男だ。
I didn't know him. I didn't even know what Project Noah was.
そうか。知らないなら別にいい。
That's the only reason that she's agreed to help me is because, like, any information she can get about her father. Senna turned away in a huff and resumed her climb in silence. She's probably regretting helping me because, God, I just feel like dead weight.
まだ。
We'd gone up at least 20 stories with next to no breaks. I'd probably never climbed so many stairs in my entire life. I was exhausted. I didn't want to climb anymore. Sweat trickled down my forehead, stinging at my eyes. I wiped it off over and over again with my hands, but it continued to bead no matter what I did. My legs felt heavy. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was going to suffocate. I planted my hands on my knees in an attempt to catch my breath. Drops of sweat fell from my face and dotted the floor.
あとどれぐらい登るの？
社長室は最上階にあるらしい。31階だ。
10 more floors to go. Hold on, why was I even going along with this in the first place? All I'd done was ask Senna to protect me, so why was this happening to me? What? Part... Something, a rep's face appeared in the back of my mind. I don't even know what that is. My heavy breathing reverberated throughout the quiet staircase. Surprisingly, Senna didn't try to go on ahead after I caught up this time. Instead, she leaned against the wall and stared at me with a blank expression on her face. It seemed like she was finally letting us take a short break. Mounted above Senna was another one of the security cameras. They were installed on every floor. There was no way they hadn't found out that we'd been climbing the staircase by now. Security guards could arrive at any moment.
監視カメラに細工をしなかったのは、
Suddenly, Senna began to murmur something.
将軍がもし望みの人間で、このビル内にいるなら、おびき寄せることができるかもしれないと思ったからだ。
つまり、僕はおとりってわけ？
そういうことになる。
I love it. She's like, yep.
もともと望みになんか興味はなかったんだけどな。このビルに乗り込むことにしたのだってイレギュラーだ。もちろん、いつかはプロジェクトノアを潰そうとは思っていたが、それは今じゃない。それよりも優先しなくちゃいけないことがあった。
She'd become awfully talkative all of a sudden. Was she finally going to explain why we were here? But Senna didn't reveal what that something else was.
お前の話を聞く限り、その将軍は何かを知ってる。あるいは、畑野のことも。
For a split second, her face stiffened upon saying that name. Were they really that terrible of a person?
安心しろ、西条。これは交換条件だ。お前におとりになってもらう代わりに、私はお前を守る。それにお前だって、将軍の正体を知りたいだろ。脅威を排除するには、こちらから攻撃。
Senna abruptly stopped. She then frowned, stepped away from the wall, and readied her gigantic D-sword, right in the middle of the narrow, cramped stairway.
どうしたの？
Senna didn't answer. She peered down the stairwell and then up, only to freeze in place.
この声、どこから？
No, it's a delusion. You can hear the sound in the background, right? That's the sound the rucksack makes, right? A voice?
お前、何者だ！
She suddenly shouted. I thought she might have been shouting at the security camera, but her gaze was directed farther upward, toward the ceiling. Except she's usually better about knowing when, like, that's about to happen and not falling for it. That was the whole end of the last episode, was, like, her telling us not to fall for the delusions. It couldn't be. I had a bad feeling about this. Unable to resist the bait, I looked up at the ceiling. Naturally, there was nothing there. After all, I couldn't hear the voice, but I had a good idea of what it was. Shogun. He was reading our minds using some satellite way up in the sky, and he was making Senna hear some kind of voice.
セナ、その声を聞いちゃダメだ。
It's weird having me tell her
Senna!
not to do it. I promptly grabbed hold of her shoulders and shook her.
将軍は、望みの人間じゃないらしい。
I was right. She had heard Shogun's voice.
騙されてる。あいつは敵だよ。信じちゃダメだ。
音だ。
My hands were still gripping her shoulders. She responded by grabbing my wrist tightly. Her nails dug in, deep, shooting pain throughout my entire body. My face twisted and...
西条、音がしている。気をつけろ。
Or she hears the sound of, like, a delusion's about to happen. She's telling me, like, hey, be careful. A flash of light burst into my head, and from that light an image came forth. A dark room, a puddle of blood staining the floor, a modern art piece resembling that of a crucifix. Someone was bound there with their head lifelessly hanging down, their clothes stained in blood, their right hand cruelly severed. I'd seen it. I'd seen it clearly. That was without a doubt NOZOMI.
ナナミがこのビルのどこかに。
She had been kidnapped by Shogun. Her wrist, that wasn't a delusion. It was real. I had to find her. I wasn't able to save her before, and now Senna was suffering too. So I had to find her. This time for sure, I had to do something.
落ち着け、西条。 これは罠の可能性が。
さっき君だって将軍の言葉を信じたじゃないか。
I violently shook Senna's hands off of me. The presidential office was on the 31st floor.
違う、音を聞け。
Oh
将
gosh,
軍の
yeah.
干渉とは別の妄想だ。
They're just having me run right into the lion's den so that they can take my code sample. I ignored her and sprinted up the stairs. This was no time to complain about my exhaustion. I was desperate. Nanami was suffering, and it was my fault. It was all my fault. I'd failed her back then. I'd run away. She must resent me. Forgive me. I'm a pathetic excuse for an older brother. Damn it, I wanted power. I wanted a D-sword like Senna's. Why? Why couldn't I get my hands on one? It was all I asked for. Nanami, don't die. I'm begging you.
Nanami!
I made it to the gigantic 31st floor, and there was only one entrance to it. Wasting no time, I flung it open and dove straight through. And just like that, I was in the very same room that I saw in the vision. Several monitors hung from the ceiling, each displaying the word NOZOMI on a white background. I looked all over for Nanami. The room was so dark I couldn't make anything out clearly, but
Nanami.
there were no signs of life. No movement, no breathing, nothing at all.
西条。
Chasing after me, Senna flew through the open door. She forcefully grabbed my hand.
今すぐ出るぞ。これは罠だ。
だってNanamiが。
聞こえないのか、この音が。
Suddenly, the door that we'd left open slammed shut all on its own. The room grew even darker.
しまった。
Senna ran to the door and wrestled with the knob, but it refused to budge. Then, the outline of the D-sword in her hand suddenly faded to nothing. It was almost as if it had completely dissolved.
閉じ込められた。
だったら力を使えばいいじゃないか。
うまく妄想できない。
Senna's face twisted. She rubbed her temples and weakly shook her head. I was getting a headache. I only noticed it when I'd regained my focus. It wasn't severe by any means, but the minor faint pain, it seemed to reverberate from the very center of my head, an ache that throbbed and throbbed and throbbed. I feel kind of lightheaded. Nanami, where are you? Is this one of Shogun's traps? Is Shogun my ally? What kind of company is Nozomi Technology? Senna had such small tits. Who is Hatano anyway? Weird. I'm losing my train of thought.
バイオ周波数攻撃を受けているぞ。
The display on two of the monitors overhead suddenly changed. In place of the Nozomi logo, the faces of two middle-aged men appeared, one on each monitor.
まったく最近の若者は恐れ知らずだな。もちろん悪い意味でだが。
いかにも。おそらく井ノ原先生が推進したゆとり教育の産物だろうね。
私はただ300人委員会のプランを実行したまでだがな。世界人間牧場計画の一環としては悪くないプログラムだったよ。
What was going on? Who were these people?
それを潰したのも井ノ原先生だというのがなんとも滑稽なところだよ。300人委員会も予想外だっただろうね。
私と倉持先生の野心も知らず、のうのうと世界を牛耳っているつもりなのだろうが、そんな連中に対するある種の宣戦布告だったんだよ、あれは。
世界を掌握するのに300人も必要ない。我ら2人で十分なのだからね。
What were those two talking about? Then, right as I was thinking that, the two men on the monitors turned their stares to me.
それにしても、ノロセが言っていた通りだったね。まさかここまで馬鹿正直に網にかかる者がいたと。
1週間も放置しておけば、衰弱してろくに抵抗もできなくなろう。それから、拷問しようとしゃれ込もうではないか。
畑野瀬名はすでにコードサンプル取得済みと資料にはある。
Hatano Senna? Who was that?
洗脳を施した方が良さそうだ。我らの兵士としよう。
兵士兼慰み者だな。ギガロマニアックスの少女を奴隷とするなど、実に気分が良さそうではないか。
井ノ原先生もお好きだね。
ではギガロマニアックスの諸君、監禁生活をせいぜい楽しみたまえ。
1週間が経つ頃にはプロジェクトノアにより世界は大きく変わっていることだろう。その変革の瞬間を見ることができない君たちに同情するよ。
Damn it, are we just gonna watch these two starve for a week? The old man disappeared from the monitors, and the room was covered in darkness once again. It had been a trap. It had all been a trap. To think 2 grown men, one of which I'm sure was a member of the House of Representatives, would join forces just to trap some random otaku freak like me. This couldn't be real. It had to be a fucking joke. Nanami wasn't here. She had to be imprisoned somewhere else. I felt absolutely pathetic for playing right into their hands. If I had known this would happen, I would have just listened to Senna.
衆議院議員と天聖振興会の教祖が300人委員会の一員だったとはな。
Senna slammed her shoulder against the entrance again and again, but it refused to give in. It'd probably been locked from the outside, and seeing as it was extremely sturdy, trying to bust it open was likely impossible.
300人委員会
If I remembered correctly, wasn't that the name of the organization which occasionally popped up in conspiracy theories? Did it actually exist?
よく考えてみればそれも納得だ。もともと沈黙の兵器の理論を作ったのは300人委員会なんだからな。
さっきのおっさんたちが言ってたプロジェクトノアって何
Having given up, Senna stepped away from the door in defeat. She surveyed the dimly lit room with a sullen expression.
のぞみテクノロジーが進めている沈黙の兵器開発計画だ。
沈黙の兵器
一言で言うなら広範囲に作用するマインドコントロール装置だな。思考盗撮、視覚投影、五感制御。肉体的には損傷を与えることはない。音もないし、色もないし、匂いもしない。目にも見えない。だが確実に多くの人の精神をゆっくりと静かに汚染していく。誰にも気づかれないまま攻撃は完了しているんだ。
まるでギガロマニアックスの力みたいじゃないか。
当然だ。沈黙の兵器はギガロマニアックスを人工的に生み出そうという考えから始まったんだからな。
It was all so insane that it didn't even feel real. But in the end, that was just the way things were. I was no hero, even if I was told that an insane conspiracy such as that were true, and it was currently unfolding in Shibuya. I wouldn't feel the slightest urge to stand against it. Even if I were to go out and fight, I wouldn't be able to help anyone. I'd just leave it to someone who was actually useful. Maybe, just maybe, the NewGen incidents, as well as the endless string of bizarre events that had been plaguing me, were all related to this Project Noah. If that were the case, I would need to leave Shibuya as soon as possible in order to protect myself. All I wanted was for Nanami to be safe, me to be safe, and for us to live in peace. That was all I wished for. For that to happen, I needed to find a way out of here. Couldn't stand the thought of being stuck in a place like this for upwards of a week, especially with there being no sign of any food or water anywhere. Oh, so that's what those old guys have been talking about. If we didn't eat or drink for an entire week, we'd inevitably start to break down. Worst case scenario, we could even die.
セナ、なんとかここから脱出する方法を考えてよ。
She's being surprisingly calm, like the fact that I got us in this situation and she hasn't snapped on me. But for her, that probably, like, it would just be a waste of energy to get upset. It's just like, we gotta figure things out.
扉は開かない。
Senna looked utterly exhausted.
ディソードは
なぜか出せなくなった。力を封じられたか。 沈黙の兵器で攻撃されているぞ。西条。
A silent weapon attack. The hell? Are you saying there's no way out? Senna, with a look of pure exhaustion, slumped down to the floor.
大丈夫？
そう。
Is she just too tired to be angry at him?
だるい。それに、なんだか妙な気持ちだ。胸の奥が締め付けられるような。
Her breathing shallow, Senna undid a few buttons of her uniform. Even in the dark, I could see her skin was drenched in sweat. Despite our situation, I found myself getting flustered. Come to think of it, it did feel pretty hot in here.
なあ、水を持ってないか？
Of course I didn't, but I was getting thirsty too, and fast. The thought of spending a full week in this heat without a drop of water made me feel utterly hopeless. Senna was staring fixedly at me. I knew there was no way I'd be able to maintain eye contact with a 3D girl, so I desperately looked away. But I could still feel her gaze piercing through me. Don't look.
水はないよ。
When I answered, I took a quick glance at Senna. Our eyes met. Hold on, what was up with those shimmering eyes of hers? She almost looked like a love-struck maiden or some shit. Well, I was both a virgin and had never had a girlfriend before, so I didn't know if that actually happened in reality. Panicking, I turned my back to Senna and gulped down my building saliva. Oh shit, are they just doing this for funsies? Just watching like weird perverts?
感情を操作されているかもしれない。
え、それってどういう？
お前を見ていると切ない気持ちになってくるんだ。くそ、ふざけた攻撃を。
So the attack involved making Senna feel like she'd fallen in love with me? Or could it be she'd already had feelings for me to begin with? Yeah, no way in hell. Use your brain, Takumi.
感情を操作って一体どんな仕組みで？
人の感情なんて結局脳を流れる電気信号でしかないんだ。その電気信号に干渉する技術は世界中で研究されてる。案外とっくに実用化されてるかもしれない。ましてや沈黙の兵器ノア2なら造作もないことだ。分かっただろう。世界は電気仕掛けだと私が言った意味が。
Does that mean it's like a program? Lines of ones and zeros? It'd be incredibly easy to tamper with something like that. It's a scientifically proven fact that electronic signals run through our brains. So in reality, not only our emotions, but both the mind and the soul are reducible to mere electronic signals. Wait a second, that's no different from 2D, is it? For example, let's look at a heroine from an eroge. Lislot from ESO, the anime version of Seraton, and Senna. What's the difference between the four of them? If what Senna says about everything in the world being an electronic device is true, then there are no differences. They're all the same. Mere electronic signals running through a device. Felt like I finally, albeit vaguely, understood why Senna had used the word error. If all of that were true, then this Noah 2 weapon would be like some super deadly virus, or someone using cheats in order to PK. Not even Neinhard could win against those kinds of people. Not only that, but compared to Neinhard, I was ridiculously shitty playable character. So in the end, being trapped here and starving to death like a pathetic loser, well, that was a pretty fitting game over for me.
僕が悪いんじゃない。
It is your fault, though. I mean, you got us in the situation.
死亡フラグ立てまくってる。僕の中の人
But
が
it's also
悪いんだ。
funny because, like, he is basically been railroaded into this by me. So in a way, maybe it's not his fault. It's my fault. Cradling my head, I curled into a ball. Around 28 hours had passed since we'd first gotten locked in here. During that time, I dozed off and lost consciousness countless times. I had been overwhelmed by a surge of uncontrollable emotions, with depression, mania, and other similar feelings leaving me mentally exhausted. Senna and I hadn't said a single word to each other the entire time. She'd pretty much been completely and entirely useless ever since we'd gotten locked up, really. The final ray of hope was the PC, aside from the ones that showed the detestable faces of the Diet member and their religious founder. There were a ton of other monitors decorating the room, and every one of them was connected to a single PC. Since the PC was connected to the internet, I tried posting a bunch of SOS messages on various boards, but it had all been in vain. I hadn't been able to post anything at all. The PC could download just fine, but uploading was completely throttled. Any attempts at sending chat messages or emails were quickly snuffed out. Under the orders of those two guys, someone, somewhere had to have been watching us. But why were they letting us access any information at all? I would soon learn the answer to that question. A few hours after starting to gather info online, I checked the articles tabs of Taboo on a whim. I guess it's like all the stuff that's going on in the world, like how everything's just going to shit outside. Riot breaks out at Shibuya Scramble Crossing. An article without a title caught my eye. And immediately after that, it happened. It all began with a tremor from below. The floor, no, the very building itself started to shake violently. The very next moment, I was struck with a violent ringing in my ears. It was such an intensely shrill, resonant sound, my head felt like it was about to burst open. I looked at Senna, who was covering her ears in agony. And then, a thunderous roar. The entire building thrashed around violently, as if the world itself was trying to make a gigantic milkshake. Unable to stand upright anymore, I tumbled over and my back crashed against the wall. Senna was crouched down in the center of the room, curled into a ball. And above her head, the monitor affixed to the ceiling was swaying back and forth like a pendulum. The world suddenly went into slow motion. The swaying of the monitor slowed down. With a dull sound, the aluminum pole holding the monitor snapped, and it fell down, ever so slowly, towards Senna. It was a feeling I'd experienced once before. It was exactly like when Ayase had jumped off the school roof. She was going to die. That giant monitor fell on her head. Senna would die. Oh, do I still have my powers? Maybe they don't think I've awakened my powers yet, so, like, I can still activate them somehow? I couldn't make it in time. There were roughly 5 meters between us. Besides, I didn't have the courage to risk my life to save a 3D girl anyway. Even so, a delusion flared to life inside my mind. In that delusion, I kicked off the shaking floor, bolted over to Senna, and threw my arms around her in magnificent save. And all of that happened. Okay, so he is... Oh, but they're going to see that. They're going to be like, oh, we need to squash this. All of that happened in an instant. In just the blink of an eye, my body teleported to Senna, threw its arms around her, and tumbled to the floor. The sound of the monitor crashing to the ground echoed right beside my ear. Even though the room had been so dark before, my field of vision was dyed white. Along with the ear-splitting sound of an explosion, I was slammed with an even greater impact than before. And with that, my last thread of consciousness was severed. How long had I been out? My consciousness drifted in and out of a deep slumber. Felt a ticklish, slightly annoying tingle on the tip of my nose, and upon noticing that faint, ever so slightly warm sensation, I slowly opened my eyes. Senna's face was only a few inches from mine. Her long hair draped over my cheeks. Her faint breaths blew right against my nose. Her eyes were closed, but her eyelashes were quivering. She must have only lost consciousness. We were really, really close. If I wanted to, I could have easily moved in and kissed her. Frantically tried to skirt away, but my body wouldn't move. That was when I finally realized what exactly had happened. Keeping my head completely still, I tried to survey my surroundings, but it was pitch black. I couldn't make out anything. It felt like a thin film had been draped over my field of vision, but there was no film. It was just a cloud of dust. We had been buried in rubble. So it wasn't that I couldn't see anything around me, it's that there weren't really gaps in the rubble at all. No matter which direction I looked, I couldn't find a single opening. We had been lodged into an extremely cramped pocket of space beneath the rubble. Whenever I tried to force my hands or legs to move, I would hear only the sound of pebbles crumbling to the ground. The sound made me realize I couldn't move or do anything at all. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead. Had there been an earthquake or something? Shibuya had experienced a lot of those recently, but maybe they had all been foreshocks. If so, this could have been the biggest earthquake to hit Tokyo since the Great Kanto earthquake. Did that mean the Nozomi building had collapsed? A terrorist attack that had happened in America several years back came to mind. bringing an intense wave of hopelessness with it. The fact that we hadn't been injured yet, despite being stuck in a crevice, was probably nothing more than an insane stroke of luck. Yet being the key word. The rubble was just barely holding itself together, maintaining an extremely delicate balance. I had no way of making sure, but it was definitely possible that dozens of tons of debris were piled on top of us. If I made a single wrong move, that balance would be lost, and then that massive pile of rubble would crush us in less than a second. Imagining that as my last moment, I instantly froze in fear. I didn't want to die. I couldn't handle the idea of being crushed to death in a place like this where nobody would ever know. Hurry up and rescue me. A rescue squad. The self-defense force. I don't care who. Just get me out of here. I tried straining my ears to see if I could hear any people around, but there was nothing but silence. A deafening, eerie silence. All I could hear was the sound of Senna's breathing. Damn it, sleep like a goddamn baby, why don't you? Senna was lying sprawled on top of me, our bodies tightly pressed against each other, perfectly complementing one another, her chest, her stomach, her legs. Nearly her entire body was right on top of me. She was heavy, and being forced to feel the softness of her arms and how slender her legs were, oh God. Naturally, I could still feel Senna's breath heating my cheek, and within it, I could smell something sweet, perhaps because of the crunchy cud she was always eating. Her breaths were deep and steady. They followed a distinct rhythm, and each time she breathed, I could feel her breast faintly moving up and down directly against my body. Whoa, was this some kind of torture? An attack of this magnitude would cause all sense of reason within me to crumble in 5 minutes tops. I needed to wake her up somehow in order to avert this crisis. Wait, I'd have to wake her up? Would it be right for me to do that? I mean, if I woke her up and she saw the state we were in, how would she react? She was the same girl who regularly scowled at everyone and everything. So, even though it was an accident far beyond my control, there was no doubt in my mind that she'd label me a pervert anyway. Considering she wouldn't be thinking clearly, there was this very real possibility that she might rip out my throat. And at this distance, taking Senna's position into account, not only could she easily do that, but I would be completely defenseless against it too. Well, that was probably a bit too extreme to be realistic, but if Senna really were to wake up in a panic, she could very well end up causing the rubble to collapse on top of us, and that'd be the end of it. Well, what the hell was I supposed to do? If I could have ripped my hair out, I would have. But since I obviously couldn't do that, I resorted to banging the back of my head against the rubble. Through that, I was able to suppress my instinctual lust for Senna. Don't pay this wench any heed. I'm not, and never will be, into 3D girls. The girls I love are all 2D. Seraton, appear before me, drive these worldly desires from my mind. I'm not into stuck-up bitches like hers, so I won't give in to my lust. I mustn't give in to my lust. I mustn't give in to my lust. I mustn't give in to my lust. I can't control it anymore. She is unconscious, isn't she? Surely no one will mind if I make ample use of her while she is. How about I taste those arrogant lips of hers, the same ones that do nothing but spew self-righteous bullshit? No, I shouldn't go straight for the lips. I'm not mentally prepared for that quite yet. In that case, how about I aim for her cheek? What does the skin of a 3D girl taste like, I wonder? Does it taste like sweat, or does it perhaps taste sweet? Oh, she's saying, Dad. Startled, I cut off the delusion inside my head. Senna's voice leaked out of her mouth, mixing in with her breath. It was as quiet as a whisper. Her voice was so soft and frail, I would have never imagined it could come from someone who is normally so fierce and unapproachable. Yep. Her eyes were still closed. It didn't seem like she'd woken up yet. She'd been talking in her sleep. I instantly felt a pang of relief, realizing she hadn't read my impure, perverted thoughts. From behind her closed eyelids, a tiny drop fell, and with a barely audible plop, landed on my cheek. It was so very warm. And yet, after only a fleeting moment, it went cold. Even Senna cried sometimes, I suppose. Now even I was starting to feel sad. Something happened between her and her father. A little worried, I timidly called out to her. With a twitch, Senna's body started to stir. Her eyes gently opened. At point-blank range, our eyes met. Drowsy Senna stared at me. Her eyes were still sleepy. She didn't seem to be fully awake yet. Don't look. It's embarrassing. It didn't take long for Senna's face to instantly turn beet red. Her eyes shot open, and her gaze raced from side to side.
これはどうなってる？
動いちゃダメだ。瓦礫に押しつぶされちゃうから。
瓦礫だと？
I explained to Senna how we'd been buried alive by the earthquake.
そうか。確かあの時、すごい揺れが来て、上から大きなモニターが落ちてきて。
Then she's gonna be like,
お前が
wait, you had a...
私を助けてくれたんだったな。
She's gonna be like, you had a delusion because there's no way you should have been able to get to me. Oh yeah, that did happen, didn't it? Though I don't have a single clue as to how.
礼を言う。私が守ってやる約束だったんだがな。まさか西条に助けられるとは。もっとダメなやつだと思っていたが、意外と男らしいじゃないか。
どうも。
I would have never thought I'd get complimented like that in a million years. It must have been the first time in my entire life that I'd gotten a compliment from a 3D girl. Granted, Seraton told me I was totally amazing all the time, but still.
だが、この状況は良くないな。
密着してるもんね。
バカ、そうじゃないだろう。ここで生き埋めになってることの方だ。
ごめん。
まあ、密着してるのも良くない状況だが。
セナのギガロマニアックスの力でなんとかしてよ。できるでしょ。
難しいかもしれないが、やるだけやってみよう。西条、私の目を見ろ。
え？なんで？
お前と私の間で周囲共通認識を作るためだ。
Did she just ask me to look into her eyes? Being squished together like this was already embarrassing enough, but doing that would completely smash any sense of reason I had left. I'd go feral.
ぐずぐずするな。聞こえなかったのか？私の目を見ろ。
Urged on by Senna's voice, I reluctantly obeyed. I gazed into her eyes. Then, those eyes turned directly toward me. Okay, yeah, this was really embarrassing. I'd never made eye contact with a girl for such a long time before. I'd never even looked people in the eye while talking to them in the first place, so I wasn't even close to comfortable with this. Making eye contact essentially meant you were the only thing the other person was looking at. Right now, I was reflected in Senna's eyes, meaning I was the only thing she was looking at. I was monopolizing Senna's field of vision, and we were so close. Upon realizing that, I couldn't help but think this embarrassing act was just as erotic as any H scene ever was. Gah, cursed by a rogue brain. Shit, I need to stop these idiotic delusions. We were making eye contact. What if Senna were to see through me? You wouldn't normally be able to read someone's thoughts just by looking into their eyes, but Kozabi could. And Senna was a gigalomaniac as well. I couldn't do this. Making eye contact with a girl was impossible.
西条、目をそらすな。
Despite her saying that, Senna's gaze wasn't pointed in the right direction either.
僕には無理。
そうか。実は私も無理だ。こんな近い距離じゃ照れる。
Seeing Senna stained beet red breathed some life back into me, actually. Where had all this moe come from? Was this girl not actually 3D? A girl this cute couldn't be 3D. Senna, you're so cute, Senna.
暑いな。
Senna's forehead, face, and even the nape of her neck were drenched in sweat. With how close we were, I could even smell it. There was no wind or anything either. The rubble bearing us had no openings. Was there even a way for air to pass through at all? If not, then we were going to run out of oxygen pretty soon. Upon thinking that, I realized that Senna's breathing had become really heavy. The rhythmic movement of her small chest on top of me had gotten much faster than before.
まさか息苦し。
うるさい。暑いだけだ。
Damn it, what was I supposed to take from that? Whatever, just use your gigalomaniac powers already. Shouldn't you be able to make all this debris disappear like magic?
西条、お前の力で なんとかならないか。この状況じゃ、私はうまく集中できない。
The hell are you on about? Don't tell me you're going to start relying on me now. How exactly do you expect me to do anything about this? Materializing a flower bed beneath Ayase and saving you earlier were both just coincidences. It's not like I did any of it on purpose, let alone consciously. Don't rely on me. I'm supposed to rely on you, Senna. Also, please stop breathing all this warm air on me. It's actual torture. A drop of Senna's sweat fell into my mouth. It was salty.
勘弁して。
I was on the verge of tears. My sense of reason was this close to flying out the goddamn window. It was in my mouth. I was holding it in my mouth. Senna's juices. Don't ever call it that, please.
おい、西条。
Senna's face was still red, but she seemed to be a lot more angry than she was before.
お前、殺すぞ。
な、
All I did was taste your sweat. You can't kill me for that. Besides, it's your fault for letting it drop into my mouth.
この状況で、よくそんな。
In the middle of speaking, Senna buried her face into my chest, unable to bear the embarrassment. There was no way she'd done it intentionally, but for me, that was the strongest blow out of anything so far. So cute. Her breathing, it was passing through the gaps in my clothes and directly onto my skin. Quickly realizing what she'd done, Senna pulled her head back. Oh, couldn't it have just lasted a little while longer?
やめろよ。お前、何を考えてるんだ。
She was obviously shaken. Maybe she was just used to being the tough person in the room, so someone else taking control really left her flustered.
今すぐ。妄想を封印しろ、西条。お前の、その、
Oh no.
股間のあれが硬くなって、私の太ももに当たってるんだ、バカが。
What? Oh, yeah, I did feel something there. Senna's soft, pillowy thighs.
妄想するなと言ってるだろ。
Suddenly, I found my face on the receiving end of a brutal headbutt. Since it was a surprise attack, and a mighty strong one at that, the single strike knocked me out like a light.
私はもう転生振興会に戻る気はない。
実に惜しいね。君の才能を私は買っていたのだ。
利用していた。
Oh, that's Hatano, isn't it?
私はもうあなたの言葉は信じない。教祖としての倉持雄大なる虚像でしかないと分かった。
信仰の救いを君も欲していただろう。
かつての私は欲していた。だが今は違う。
では何を欲しているのか。
償いのための死だ。
一度信仰に触れた者は離れることなどできない。君は離れたつもりでも信仰はいかなるものをも見捨てない。
神に頼る気はもうない。神に匹敵するものを作ってしまった私には神にすがることは許されない。
Such a weird sound. Is he like in the room with us right now? Like removing rubble? And he's talking to one of the guys through the monitor? Except the monitor seemed to have like been cut off.
西条。
It is. Okay, he is here. I could hear an extremely pompous conversation between two unfamiliar men. Senna's hushed shouts jutted in between the two voices, causing me to open my eyes. Unsurprisingly, we were still squished together, enclosed in rubble with no way to escape. Yeah, it sounds like he is talking to him through the monitor.
全ては君の責任だが一人で背負うには重すぎるだろう。信仰の救いがもたらされればその重みも多少は減る。
そう、私が選んだ。信仰の導きに従った。いや、あなたの言葉に従った結果としてだ。
誰かいる。話し声が聞こえるだろう。
I nodded in response. I could hear the voices of two men. It seemed like some cosmic Church of the Divine Light randos. At the very least, it definitely wasn't a rescue party. But it sounds like he's removing the rubble, doesn't it?
近く。
I could vividly hear the sound of Senna gritting her teeth.
言葉を語るのはやめるんだ、クラムという。あなたの見ている僕は、もう私の心にも響かない。残念だ。もっとも君がいなくても、すでに
So he's gonna help us try and stop Noah too. And the dad's probably gonna die, because he always seems to die.
我らの手はあなた井の花創造のいかにサードメルトの実験成功によりプロジェクトの試験段階を終了し
A third man joined the conversation. What the hell were they talking about? And where was it coming from? The fact we could hear their voices meant they had to at least be somewhere close to us. Maybe there wasn't as much rubble on top of us as we might have thought. Senna shifted slightly. Her hand gripped my uniform tightly. So tightly it was like she was enduring an intense pain. Her gaze pointed downward, but she didn't make eye contact with me.
これからの世界秩序300人による統治から2人による統治に変わるというわけだ。今日がその夜明けだよ。
Yep, there we go. My field of vision was suddenly overwhelmed with light. The small pieces of rubble surrounding us began to crumble. Senna raised her head in shock. A hand reached toward us from above, peeking through a gap in the rubble.
無事か、セナ。
前。
Alright guys, that is going to do it for this episode. I did play ahead a little bit, but it seems like this is going to be a longer ending. I didn't know quite where to end it. I feel like that might have been a good spot to kind of like leave a little bit of a cliffhanger. So the ending, we will finish it in the next episode. So far a little bit dry, but I do like the idea of them like just going instead of the previous episodes where it's just like Nishijo's kind of just bumbling along with the girls. Like this time him and Senna are going kind of right into the lion's den, and you know, not surprisingly did not work out well for them. So it seems like her father's come to help her, so maybe we're all going to team up together and take down Nozomi, and maybe they will, like, I don't know, hug it out and everything will be better, but I doubt it's going to end that happily, so we'll just have to see in the next episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned next week for part 29. Until then, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Revealing Storm, Lynn's VA, Lunar, Kenju Storm, iCognito, and Bad Cat.